If you want to start with a poem, so we give a little more time for people to join.
Okay, yes, that will be great.
Then you let me, start talking in English. I'm not that fluent in English. I'm sorry. Please, everybody, excuse me.
No, it's okay.
Or how slide about it. One thing, there was this guy who was a human resources guy from a very big company. He started a podcast. He liked stories. So he started a podcast about stories. And then one day he said that he didn't like literature. He didn't read any books that was fiction. He only read business books. And that somehow didn't make sense to me, because if you want to tell a story and if you want to use storytelling for a business presentation, you need to read some fiction. You need to read some poems, you need to read some poetry, you need to read some literature, and you need to read some really good literature. So it kind of freaked me out, to hear that there's people that want to use storytelling, but they don't like to read, literature. So it doesn't go along. I mean, you will see in this course, I hope, that some of the things that you will find out are very useful for telling stories and for using those stories in business presentation is the fact that you start reading some literature. So let's start with a poem, just to give a little bit more time to people to join, and then we'll start with the course right away. Okay. This poem is called Santiago by David White. It says, "The road seen, then not seen. The hillside hiding, then revealing the way you should take. The road dropping away from you, as if leaving you to walk on thin air, then catching you, holding you up when you thought you would fall. And the way forward, always in the end, the way that you came, the way that you followed, the way that carried you into your future, that brought you to this place, no matter that it sometimes took your promise from you, no matter that it always had to break your heart along the way. The sense of having walked from far inside yourself out into the revelation, to have risked yourself for something that seemed to stand both inside you and far beyond you, that called you back in the end to the only road that you could follow, walking as you did in your acts of love, and speaking in the voice that by night became a prayer for safe arrival." That's just a little abstract. I don't know if you have heard that one before, but if you start doing some reading, some fiction reading, you will catch up a lot of ideas that will help you along the way. So let's start with the course. I'm going to switch to the presentation. I won't be able to see you. So please, if you have something that you want to say, interrupt me at any time. But just do it with your voice, because I won't be able to see if you're waving or something like that, okay?
Yep.
Okay. The course is called Dominating Dinosaurs. I started this course during the pandemic. The name came from a student that I had, a student from Colombia, that once he told me, my friends told me that I could be the guy that could actually, train dinosaurs, because I'm very good at solving problems. So I kind of like the way that sounds, and I used that name. I took it from him. I stole it to name this course. In Spanish, it's called Dominando Dinosaurios. So I tried, to keep all these. Hope it doesn't sound weird in English. So, well, let's start with a fact. It's a fact that you have to know when you're telling a story. An anecdote is not the same as a story. An anecdote is something that happened to you. Like saying, well, I was coming here to give this presentation to you guys, and there was a lot of traffic, and I got mad. That's an anecdote. That's something that happened to me. It's not, it has no other thing than that. But if I do that as a story, then I will say, guys, when I was coming over here, there was this guy that was driving in front of me, and then he invaded my lane, and I was about to crash him, and I got really, really angry. But then I thought, maybe I didn't get angry before. Maybe when I was 20, this kind of thing just, slip away. Now that I'm 40, these kind of things actually make me very angry. So maybe the problem is not that guy in the lane. Maybe the problem is me. Maybe the problem is that I'm not, cheerful as I used to be. So right now I'm turning something that happened to me into a story that had a learning, something that actually changed me. So that's the thing about stories. Stories actually change you. They reach your emotion. And that's why they're so powerful, because if you tell a story to someone, you can actually, get to their emotion and actually make that emotion to work in your favor. So one thing that we're going to use in this course is, if your story is not really that good and people are not actually following it, it's because it's lacking drugs. And that's not metaphorically. Actually, it's lacking drugs. So in this course, we're going to learn what kind of drugs we need to use to make a story actually very attractive. So we'll start with the first one. I hope nobody's getting nervous here, because, don't worry, the police is not following. The first drug, and maybe the most important one, the one that you should always use first, if you want your story to be something that people actually find attractive, is dopamine. Dopamine is a drug, neurotransmitter in your brain that actually helps you learn. It's something that captures your attention. It's something that people that suffer from TDA, I guess the thing, atención dispersa. I don't know how to say it in English, but I'll get the meaning. They actually are lacking dopamine. So if you want the story to be something that captures the attention of your audience, you first need to use dopamine. How do you use dopamine? Yeah, I don't know if anybody of you has ever read 1 Years of Solitude from Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I don't know if you have, but the novel starts like this. It starts many years later, as he faced the firing squad. Colonel Aureliano Buendia was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice. This is the first sentence in the book. The book is around 700 pages wide. And the thing about Gabriel Garcia Marquez is that he always keeps, throwing hooks. It's called a hook. These hooks are on the way. So, for example, here we know that there's a colonel that is actually facing a firing squad. He's about to die. And as he's facing this firing squad, he's remembering that time when his father took him to discover ice. If you read the first chapter of the book, then you'll know the story about when this colonel was a kid and they're in this, fair that was brought by the gypsies. And that's the time that he finds about ice. But you will need to read almost half of the book to actually find out why that guy was in front of a firing squad. And then there are so many hooks in the book, in the first chapter and so forth, that you end up reading the whole 700 pages just to know what happened with everyone, because all the books that Gabriel Garcia Marquez used. So this is a great way to start a story. When you use dopamine, when you use these hooks to capture your audience attention, you not only, it's not only that the attention that you cause, you also capture the focus. Because when you're using a really good hook, people feel that there's something that they will learn, even if it's a gossip. There's something they will learn. There's something for them there. So the dopamine also gives you this motivation reward mechanism. So every time you listen to this hook, you feel that there's something that you will learn. And once you learn what was that, the conclusion of that hook, then you receive a reward. You receive more dopamine in your brain. So it works very well. And it also helps you with your memory and your learning process. So it's not the same, for example, to explain how something works just by doing it like a manual, than if you do it like a story. We evolved as human beings to learn from stories. Human beings have been around probably 300,000 years. And stories were present around maybe 200,000 years ago. Writing was present almost 13,000 years ago. So stories have been have been present in the human lives for a long time. And our brains are actually evolved to use stories. Every time that we see some dopamine anywhere, I mean, we have all the social networks program. Every time that we see some dopamine, actually our attention goes to that. And we're trying to be like that, and we have evolved to be like that because we learn through stories. That was the way human beings used to learn. We didn't learn through PowerPoint, we didn't learn through Excel, we didn't learn through language, we didn't learn through reading. We started learning by listening to stories, by listening to the stories of others. And all those stories start with the dopamine. If there's a question anytime, or if I'm going too fast, please stop me anytime, guys. I will move on to the next drug. The next drug is called oxytocin. There's a very short story. It's only 6 letters long. It was written by Ernest Hemingway. This story appeared for the first time in a newspaper. It's for sale, baby shoes never worn. Now, before I go on, could anybody please tell me why the baby shoes were never worn? Anybody?
Well, the baby doesn't walk.
Oh, that's pretty optimistic. I must say that this was, published in the newspaper during the war. So, I guess.
Well, I think that the baby never born, probably.
Never wore the shoes? Yeah, the baby never wore the shoes, but why do you think it never wore them?
Oh, I mean, when he born, he was dead or she was dead.
Exactly. That's it. So the baby never wore the shoes because he didn't actually get to birth. So this is very powerful. I mean, it's just six words. Nevertheless, it tells a very sad story. And I don't know if any of you are right now feeling kind of sad about it. If you are, that means that this story is actually causing some oxytocin. If you recall, every time that we see have you seen the Teleton? This massive TV program that happens here in Mexico to fund all these centers that are used for rehabilitation for kids. If you actually been or have ever seen those shows, you first hear the story about the kid. You heard the story about the kid and his mother or her mother, and the way her mother or his mother has to carry this child in the bus and drive a lot of hours and come from a very far away to get to this Teleton center just so the kid can have this rehabilitation, because the kid probably was born with a very strange disease and cannot be treated anywhere. So when you're watching the show, you first heard the story. They first present the story of the kid and his mother or her mother. And then after they have finished the story, and you have seen what it's like for a kid that goes to the center, then they ask for the money. Why do you think they do it like that? Why don't they just first ask for the money and then tell the story? Anybody?
I have some ideas, but maybe other members want to share something.
Yeah, sure. Please, one at a time, please. Well, the reason why they do that is because if we hear the story first, then we will be more empathic to the cause of the Teleton Center. And if we do that, then we will be more eager to give money to the show. Because when you consume oxytocin in your story, you're making people to become more empathic. They're more empathic about you. And they feel more, related to you. So you also, at the same time, build more generosity. And for example, I tell the story about a mother and his child and the way and all the things that they have to suffer to actually get to travel a couple of hours to get to this one of the Teleton Center. And now we're funding a new center that will be closer to this mother and his child. And now she won't have to spend all this money to go and take the kid onto this rehabilitation. And you see that story and you relate to that story, it's more probable or more likely that you will, fund money for that center. And at the same time, you build trust. This is a very important thing. I mean, this one is the one that I use the most whenever I'm making this presentation, because the hardest thing to do when you're trying to get into a sales with a new customer is that you need to build trust, and it's kind of hard to build trust. And if you share a story, especially if it's a story about yourself, it doesn't have to be as tragic as somebody died or something like that. But if you tell the story about yourself, the simple action of telling the story is building trust, and is providing these people to get to know you and get to trust you and get to maybe feel empathetic about you and actually feel generous about you. So this is a very powerful ingredient when you're trying to sell something, because you're building trust as you tell the story. Remember, if you have a doubt, please just shout it out. If you don't, I'll keep on moving to the next drug. The next drug is called endorphins. I mean, this is probably more of a familiar neurotransmitter. This one is the one that your body generates when you're doing exercise and you're feeling, you're feeling kind of worn out, and then your body produces endorphins, and you get like this second rush, like this second air, and you start keep doing your workout or running or whatever, because endorphins give you this rush, this second air that we call. And also we produce endorphins when we laugh. I'm going to just show a couple of examples. This is, I must say, American jokes. So maybe some of them won't seem as funny. I will get to why humor is not as funny, or it's not the same anywhere. But it's just to prove the points. I mean, this was a joke about Arthur Clarke. It says, "I don't believe in astrology. Sagittarians are skeptical. We Sagittarians are skeptical. If you live to be 100, you got it made. Very few people die past that age." It was said by George Barnes that actually died past 100 years. "A computer once beat me at chess, but it was no match for me at kickboxing." This was by a comedian called Lemon Phillips. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to listen. Please let me know if you can listen to the sound. Sometimes it's kind of troubling hearing Google Meet. But this was a social experiment that took place in the subway. Can you listen to the music?
No, I don't think. No.
It's not sounding okay.
No, we cannot hear.
Sorry. Yeah, it's because I don't know why. It has to do with Google Meet. But well, what is happening here? These guys gets on the subway, and you don't see everybody is just tired and stuff. And this guy just starts laughing out of the blue. And he has like this very contagious laughter, and everybody starts laughing at the same time with him. So you see, as people start laughing, people start to feel better, feel like relief. They forget about the bad day, whatever they were thinking about, and they just feel more optimistic. They feel more happy. And once they start laughing, all the mood, just lights up. So laughter and endorphins are very powerful, especially if you're having a bad day. So, well, next. So endorphins provide optimism. Actually, they're being proved to create creativity. If you're leading a group of people and you want them to be creative, and you want them to have, like this brainstorm, it's a great idea to first have them laugh, either by telling a joke or just by, getting this video high volume and get them to laugh. That actually helps to lighten things up, and it also helps to help people get more creative. And it also reduces stress. So this is another drug that we can use for our stories, or another drug that we can use before we start the story. Okay? Remember, if there's a doubt, please just shout it out. I'm going to the next drug. The next drug is called serotonin. This drug is called the drug of happiness. Now we're about to see Trump going again, for the elections of the United States. And we're going to see a lot of serotonin being provided by Trump. in his political speeches. He uses a lot this drug to get people, right behind him. So serotonin, the thing that serotonin does, it makes you happy. It makes you feel that everything is okay. It's a great example in Peter Pan. Peter Pan said, the world is made of fairy, trust, and fairy dust. So no matter what you say, no matter if you tell me that the world is awful, no, I won't believe that because the world is made of faith, trust, and fairy dust. There's an example. I don't know if anybody of you saw this movie. This is a movie from the 80s. There are a lot of movies from the 80s that actually use serotonin to make people feel better. This movie is called Kyle Fuller, I guess, Days Off. And it's the story of this guy that was in high school, and one day he decides to take a day off. And in that day, everything happens pretty cool for him. I mean, he has, like a very nice life, and he goes to New York, things will happen better for him. He goes into a parade, he sings, whatever, he has a great day. So the goal of these movies, of the 80s movies, was for people to feel, better, for people to consume more. So when the people went to the movie theaters and saw this kind of movies, they actually came out of the theater and they felt pretty well about being American, pretty well about being rich, pretty well about having credit cards. So they spend a lot of money. So every time Trump goes into a political speech and he throws serotonin into his speech, and he does it by saying, we the Americans that love the army, love our forces, love the police, one nation, one flag, and stuff like that, things that makes people from America very proud. These people starts to, segregate serotonin. They start to feel happy. They start to feel that everything is going to be okay. They don't have to worry about anything. So serotonin has a very strong residual effect, and it helps with feeling that wellness, it helps with feeling happiness, and it helps with increasing your self-esteem. So I really hope I'm not going too fast, because probably this is going to be a lot for to take notes. But we're going to have an example at the end of all of our drugs, and you won't be able to hear to the next videos. We'll have to end with the story. So I will provide some examples about how to use all of these drugs in one case. The next drug that we have and that we can use for a story is called testosterone. I will use sport examples here. Talent wins game, but teamwork and intelligence wins championships. It was said by Michael Jordan. Again, this video won't have sound. I'm sorry about that. But I don't know how old you are, but if you recall this game in 1989, it was like the first big game that Michael Jordan won. He was playing for the Chicago Bulls. If you don't recall this, I mean, the Chicago Bulls were like a very lousy team. They didn't get past the first round of the playoffs. They didn't used to get to the playoffs. And this was the first time that they were actually, in a position to win series. And they were playing the much talented favorite Cleveland Cavaliers. And they were in the last minutes and they were down at one point. So, and they were playing in Cleveland as well. They were, against the odds. So when they were happening, this happened. Shot. This is what made Michael Jordan, like this testosterone guy that we all know. So, well, this was what happened 2 possessions early. There were like 6 seconds left on the clock when Michael Jordan made his shot. And then they came back and did this. And they scored. And now there are only 3 seconds left. So it seems like no matter how good the Chicago Bulls played, no matter how good Michael Jordan played, they still were going to lose the series. They were going to get disqualified and go back to Chicago, beaten up. So it doesn't seem like much can be done in 3 seconds. So that's when the shot happened. Sorry for the audio. So when Michael Jordan is shot, I mean, you see how all the testosterone is, flowing. Everybody's with their arms in the air and screaming and shouting, and that feeling is testosterone. I mean, people that like football, like championships or any other sports, the meaning of that. And if any of you saw The Wolf of Wall Street, will recall that most of the time the Wolf was actually using testosterone to get everybody fired up. So this is very powerful, to get your team of sales to become, more active, or you want people to invest in your project, or you want people to take a risk or to buy, whatever is considered to be very risky. Because once you feel testosterone in your body, you feel more powerful, you feel more fortitude, you feel more, that you can take risks and nothing's going to happen to you. And your self-trust is increased. I'm gonna do an exercise, and I would like everybody, to turn your camera on if you can. We're gonna do something to increase your testosterone right now. It's not going to be true story. I just need you to please turn your cameras on. And if you can, please stand up. Please stand up.
From my side, I have internet connection issues. Sorry.
Okay, then stand up. We believe that you will stand up. Don't worry.
Yep.
Everybody, please stand up. Please stand up. We'll call the turn. Okay. If you're feeling nervous about something, the best thing that you can do is increase your testosterone. And since you probably won't be able to tell yourself a story or to watch Michael Jordan scoring his last shot, what you're going to do is go into the bathroom and do this Superman pose. You're going to close your fist, you're going to put them in the waist. You're going to fill your chest with air, and you're going to imagine that you're looking at the horizon. And you feel your cake going. You feel that? Every time you increase the size of your chest, or every time you put your arms in the air right above your head, your testosterone in your body increases. You start feeling more powerful. You start feeling more in control. And now you're ready to go into that business presentation and knock everybody down. This is just a simple trick. And if you want to produce the same feeling in your audience, you must go into a high testosterone in your body. So if any of you ever, anytime want to go there and raise money, don't forget to put the testosterone. And don't forget to decide where to put your testosterone. Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next drugs. Now that we're into drug business. Okay. Now we're going to talk about a contrast drug. This is more delicate. I'm going to tell an example later on about a time when I used this drug. But this drug actually causes depression. It's called cortisol. Reality is the leading cause of stress among those in touch with it. So actually, reality is the main thing that will cause us depression and cortisol. There's a very good movie that I had as an example here. Too bad, I'm really sorry you can't hear the audio, because the lines that this guy says are extremely good. But if anybody has actually seen Seven, has seen the ending, this is the ending of the movie, you will know that Seven is a movie that is based on cortisol. Everything that happens all the time just keeps putting you down and down and down and down. And when these guys finally got the murderer, and they had these guys on his knees, these guys plays his final trick and sends them this box. And in the box, there's a surprise, a novel surprise. I really don't want to spoil it because it's a really nice scene. if we have time or if you have time on, I can, share the link. But this is a story that keeps, people depressed the whole time. I'm sure that nobody that went to see Seven, after the movie, nobody bought anything. They didn't spend a dime. They didn't go to the mall and, bought a bed sheet or whatever. They didn't buy anything. I'm really sure that they feel like really bad after this movie. So why should we use this cortisol in a story? When you use cortisol, you produce anguish, you produce stress, and you produce sadness. So why should we use that? Another reason why we should use cortisol in a story is because we want the whole audience to be at the same level, and we want them, to be really low so they can feel the high more. When you start telling the part, when you start, talking about oxytocin or serotonin or testosterone or endorphins, they will feel that more because they were already buried down. Because you started the story by, putting a lot of cortisol. I strongly suggest not to leave people down here, please, because that won't help your cause. But you can use that as a contrast, to make the following breakthrough more vivid. And lastly, we will talk about adrenaline. Adrenaline is really something that you should not use no matter what in your story, no matter what. You must be very conscious about adrenaline because it's likely that if you're having a meeting, somewhere, probably very early, a lot of people will get there with a high levels of adrenaline. People will get mad because they had, to deal with the traffic. They had to deal with, rushing because whatever, the clock didn't sound or anything. So please, 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 no matter what you do, don't go into a mirroring presentation and say, we all fall down here. Please don't. Because everybody, will just run away. Nobody will actually just think what you were trying to say. Nobody will think this is funny. People will just start, running away from you. Because we all know what it means that we all float up here. Okay? So, adrenaline is great when we're going to the amusement park. It's great when you're, getting into this roller coaster. But adrenaline causes fear. Adrenaline causes tension. And it gets you into this mood that is only fight and run. If sometimes you feel like you're not getting through with this client, you're not getting through with this customer, with this prospect, is maybe the cause is because he's or she is high on adrenaline. He's in a fight or run mood. So if you want her or him to get out of that stage, the best thing that you can do is lighten things up by using some endorphins. By telling a stupid dad joke or something like that, but just to lighten things up. And then you will see that the message will start getting through. So this is more like something that you should avoid, or you should work about when you're doing your story. Something that you have to be conscious about. Okay, so now that you know all these drugs that you can use that are beautiful and that can actually make this very boring PowerPoint presentation into something that will get people, to stand on their feet and scream and stuff, you have to design this emotions roller coaster. Because it won't feel the same for everybody. Some people will enjoy it, some people will frighten it, some people will maybe find it way too much. And therefore, whenever you're designing a story, you must be very conscious about 3 factors that you must take into account. The first one, and the most important one, is who is your audience? Who are you going to tell the story to? If you're going to tell the story to a couple of entrepreneurs, young people, cheerful people that are always, like in a good mood, or most of the times are in a good mood, well, you can probably start right away, with some oxytocin, some dopamine, and people will catch up pretty fast. But if you're doing this, this talk to, people that is, has been to a lot of these sessions is kind of bored because they think that they're going to witness the same boring PowerPoint presentations, and they're stressed, and their phones keep ringing, and they can't get their eyes off their phones. Then you need something to snap them out of it. Maybe you need to use a more powerful dopamine, or you need to tell a greater joke and increase their endorphins on you. You need to do something to get them out of there. So this is very important when you're designing your story. I mean, it's not something that will just, happen on the spot. You need to work on prior. The second very important is the scenery. For example, right now, I'm failing with my scenery because the sound is not sounding. And much of what I prepared for you was actually based on the sounds. So you have to be very, very, conscious about your scenery. It's not the same to tell a story or to do a presentation when you're, working here in a Google Meet environment, or if you're doing one-on-one, or if you're actually, on stage, you have a lot of props that you can get from. So that also works a lot. The more props that you can use, props is, something that you can use to express a concept, the better and the most remarkable that your presentation is going to be. And the third one, very important one, is your goal. What are you trying to achieve? Do you want that people your audience to invest in your project? Do you want them to join your company? Do you want them to buy your product or your service? What do you want from them? Depending on what do you want from your audience is how you're supposed to design your story. If you want them to get fired up and face that new sales goal or that new challenge that you have in front of you, then maybe you should use testosterone. And most of the story must be designed to use testosterone on your audience. And if you want them to join your company, you want these people, young people, talented people to join your company, maybe you need to use some more oxytocin, to talk more about yourself, to talk more about the challenges that your company is facing. So that's mainly what will drive how you design this story. There's a video here, but I'm going to skip that part because there's no sound, so there's no point in it. I would like to hear a little bit more from you. And then, after I hear a little bit from you and your experience telling stories, we'll go on with an example of how to design stories, since we still have a couple of minutes left. So anybody has tried to tell a story and it didn't work out? And you did? Anybody? Or have you all the time been, PowerPoint perfect? I mean, it's fair to say, I used to be PowerPoint perfect all the time. I mean, I also did these 40 slide presentations in PowerPoint that people fall asleep. I used to have a record about that. Has anybody tried? Joaquin, I feel like you tried.
Yeah, I tried. I used to work at a marketing agency, so PowerPoint and making presentations and storytelling were the most important part of the job. But a lot of times you lose the attention of the person, right? You like the flow of the presentation, it's like starts going down, and then you can never get them involved again. So I think that's one of the biggest problems that I had, like sharing that excitement or that positive thing that I was seeing in my presentation.
Cool. That's a really nice insight. Thank you. Let me share you an experience that I had with a very problematic audience. I used to work for a construction company, and we used to build offices, corporate offices. And there's not a lot of clients that actually need corporate offices. And most of the deals happen through a project manager. There are these big, like 4 or 5 companies that actually do project management. And most of the times, those companies are the ones that invite you to the bids to work as a construction. And all these guys, these project managers, are used to all the time listening to the same PowerPoint presentation. when all these construction companies come and say, yes, we do quality, cost, and service. Quality, cost, and service. And everybody speaks quality, cost, and service. And the project managers see that presentation like a lot of time, because there are like 5 or 6 construction companies that come and present the same thing time and time again. So there was this project management company that I really wanted to work with. And they were like very structured. And they told me, no, you can come and, start, picking every project manager one by one. We will prepare a meeting for you. All the 15 project managers will be in that meeting. You will give a presentation, and you will have to pay for the breakfast as well. And that is going to happen in 4 months. And I was like, oh, come on, 4 months? Come on, but it's June, man. I mean, no, that's the only way. September, 15 project managers all together, you pay for the lunch or the breakfast, and then you do a presentation there. And I was, that time talking with my boss and saying, we're going to invest a lot of money and time and effort to do the same cost, service, quality presentation that we do all the time. Why don't we give it a shot with a storytelling? Let's do something different. So I designed a story that was based on the Joker. This was 2019. The Joker was just released on the movie theaters. And I said, why don't we do a story that is based on the villain? Let's make the protagonist of the story to be the bad guy. So when I arrived at that presentation, I told him, I'm not going to make the same PowerPoint presentation that you all guys know, because you saw that a lot of times. When I was saying this, everybody was on their cell phone like, yeah, okay, go ahead, yeah, sure. We're listening, sure, yeah, go on. Nobody was paying attention. So when I told them we're going to do a story, everybody was like, what? Story? And then I start telling about the Joker in the movie. And phones start going down. So I said, let's create a story. Let's create a story where the bad guy is the main guy. Like the Joker. Remember that movie, The Joker? You all want to see The Joker? Okay. So, but our bad guy is not going to be the Joker. It's going to be the world we live in. It's going to be the VUCA world. This world that is ambiguous, that is chaotic, that is, various stuff. Let's do it. That's going to be our bad guy. And everybody was like, bad guy, VUCA, what is this guy talking about? Then I said, the heroes are going to be my kids. I have, teenagers at the time. And my kids are going to be like the heroes, no? But the main character is the bad guy. Let's put our kids as the heroes, okay? Our conflict is going to be that my kids don't want to go to the college anymore. They don't want to go to college. And then one of the directors was like, come on, what do you mean they don't want to go to college? You must make it go to college. I mean, that guy was like, part of this school group. He promoted this school a lot, so he jumped right away. And I said, okay, cool down. We're getting there. We're telling the story. We're getting there. We're just in the conflict. Just keep on with me, please. So I said, well, the thing is that my kids don't want to go to college because everybody's saying that the world is going to end in 2015. So at that time, there's only 35 years left before the world collapses. And my kids are going to spend 15 years or so, in school. So they say, why should we spend those 15 years in school, the best year that we have left, if the world anyway is going to end in 2015? So 2050. So why? Why should we do that? Let's just waste the money. Let's travel around. Let's have some fun. And everybody was like, what's wrong with this guy? I mean, we're project managers. What's he trying to get to? So I said, well, that's our conflict, okay? Everybody's on that. That's our conflict. Okay. Now, our conflict is not something if we don't provide, like real arguments for it. So then I started showing all these pictures from things that were happening in the news at the time. There was this picture from the island, the crash island that is in the Pacific Ocean. There was this picture from, Arctic bear walking on dead grass with no snow, all thin, all bad. I mean, there was this girl that was eating his sandwich, and when he saw the bear, he just put the sandwich back and rolled the bag and leave it there because she felt like he wasn't hungry anymore. And there was all these pictures from things that were bad, that were happening at the time. And people start going down. I was using cortisol, this story. So people start going down when I start seeing the pictures. But then I say, well, but there has to be some resistance. I mean, it can't be that easy for the bad guy. So then there were pictures from, Greta Thunberg at the time had just spoken in the United Nations. And there was this guy, 25 years old guy, that was cleaning this island, this trash island. And there was this project by China that they just planted like 3 million trees in the desert. And there were people doing stuff. So there's things happening. I mean, it's not that easy for the VUCA war to win over. But then what is happening in Mexico? And then more bad news, more pictures of things that happen in Mexico. Huachicol, people taking over there were these taxis that actually disrupted all reform at the time, and really bad news. So what do I tell my kids? What should they do? Should they study? Should they not study? Should they leave Mexico? What should they do? I mean, and everybody was really, nobody was watching their phones anymore. Nobody was eating their breakfast. Everybody was 100% focused on the subject that we were discussing, telling a story. What are we going to tell those kids? Because it's something that we all speak about. When we go and take a coffee and we find ourselves in the hall, we speak about maybe we're not doing enough. Maybe we're here being privileged in this nice office, in this nice company, really earning a lot of money, and we're not doing enough. Maybe we're not transcending. Maybe the work that we do is not transcending. And that was something that was in the mind of everyone. At the time, it was very common for young people to quit jobs because they felt that their job was not transcending. So at that point, everybody was at the lowest point, high on cortisol, at the lowest point. Everybody, the 15 project managers were there. In that point, I said, when I was designing this story, I knew that I couldn't leave you like this, but I didn't know how to turn the story around. So I had to went and look at my heroes. What would my hero do? And I have a hero, he's an author, and he's called Haruki Murakami. He's a prestigious bestseller. And it turns out that there was a time in 2003 that we were also, filled with all these bad stories. There were the Twin Towers, the wars in Pakistan, the wars in Afghanistan, the wars in Iraq. There was this huge tsunami that actually wiped out and killed a lot of people in the Indian Ocean. So there was a lot of bad things happening at the time. And somebody interviewed Haruki, and he said something that was very interesting. He said, now that I'm famous, and I'm a famous writer, I sometimes feel that I have to do something about everything that is going bad. Sometimes I feel that I'm not doing enough. But then I think that the best thing that I can do is do my work better. I can write better. I can produce better novels. I can connect in a better way with my readers. And if I do that, if I put an effort, all my work, in the things that I can do, in the things that I'm good at, and I do those things better, then I will connect and I will provide more things and I will make the world better. So I said to all those project managers, what you must do is do a better work. You must do your work better. You don't need to go out, try to make 3 million people to plant a tree. You don't need to get in a boat and go to the United Nations and speak in front of 100 countries. You don't need to do that. You need to do your work better. Don't fulfill your work. Don't just do your work. Do it better. Put an extra effort. After I finished that story, everybody was quiet. 15 project managers that can't leave their phones down were in complete silence for 20 seconds. Complete silence. After that silence was broken because somebody said, okay, that's great. Well, now tell us about your company. Tell us what you do. The presentation of my construction company took 2 questions, and that was it. And then after I made the presentation, everybody was really happy. The directors were happy because I gave him also a tool for whenever a guy walks into the office and I feel like your work is not transcending. No, don't complain here. Just do your work better. I gave him a solution. So when I told them, well, I feel this request. Now, please, can we have a meeting so we can see how we can work with you? The director from this project management company told me, you're all set, man. We don't need another meeting. You're going to be invited to the next bits. We're pretty happy with the presentation that you just provided for us. So it's really powerful. I mean, it must be designed. It requires a lot of work, and it requires some creativity. And I mean, sometimes you can be prepared enough. Sometimes, you know, the opportunity just pops up, and you need to have these stories like pre-prepared, like we're like thought like from before, like 5 or 6 stories that you can tell about yourself and that you keep on your sleeve, and that you can just use like if there were your aces or your Uno cards. Here goes my 4, and you change the color. Something like that, something like you can have for every occasion. I mean, somehow I'm in the middle of in a meeting with some investors, people that can invest money in my company. I have this story for that. I have this story that has a lot of oxytocin and a lot of testosterone. And after I tell this story, people will want to invest in my company. And it's a story that I know by heart. And it's a story that I have been working on for the last 2 months. So that's how much I need to work in that story. So, I mean, we're almost about time. I tried to make it as fast as I could in just 1 hour. Usually this course is a theoretical course. It takes 2 hours, the theory part. And then I go on into personal sessions with everyone. When we work on a story, we do that. The people that I've been working with, they put that story that they have on their mind and that they just can tell right, they put it on paper. And then we start working on that story. And it takes like 4 to 6 sessions to actually get that story straight. And after the 6-day session, they're telling a story in front of an audience, and the story achieves their goal. It works for the goal that it was designed for. So if anybody has any question, please, I'm all ears.
I don't have questions, but I have like a lot of insightful information that I can use for different things. I not only part of Landa, but also work with a community of female founders. So it's very interesting to understand like this is a resource and it's not something that you can exceed or like manage well in the first time that you can try to tell a specific story. So thanks a lot, Jose, for sharing a lot of insight. This is a recording. It's been recorded, so we will share this with the rest of the community. But I don't know if anyone in the audience want to share something with Jose. Probably it will be awesome to have like a second session or something like that, just to explore specific things. But yeah, thanks a lot for your time. I don't know also if you want to say something else.
Well, I appreciate the time. I like to speak about storytelling all the time. Please go ahead. Anybody, Marcelo, you want to say something?
I have a question here. Do you think that people can move quickly from one drug or mood to the other? Or do you have to give time to move from one to the second one?
You meaning your audience? You're speaking about your audience, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Sometimes you need to give time for things to sell. In the example that I just gave, after I finished the story, I got quiet. I didn't break the silence. I let the story end up and sink in. That's why it was 20 seconds, because I didn't do anything to break that silence. I just finished the story, I said the final line, and I shut them up. So it helps. I mean, those pauses actually help. If you're probably moving from, let's say you're doing a story and your story goes from going very low to a lot of testosterone, maybe you need to do some pauses to make sure that people is actually, getting the feeling that you want them to feel. If you go too fast all the time, people won't catch up. I mean, it even takes time for people to get used to the tone of voice, to the speed that you do, to your bad English, like mine English. It's pretty awful. So people take some time to actually get to understand you. So you need to start your stories slow. So people first start, getting used to your voice. And then you need to work with those velocities to say something. And sometimes you need to make a pause. If you're going to move from, let's say, the part when I'm doing the dopamine and I'm doing the hook, maybe you need to do a small pause there, and then you go to the oxytocin part. There's some spaces there that you need to maybe remain silent so people know that you made a hook and that you're moving to something else. But yeah, that's a great question also.
Thank you.
Awesome. I don't think we have time for more questions, but please, if you have any question or want to reach out to Jose, he's already in the Slack, in the Landa Slack, so you can reach out to him directly. But yeah, thanks a lot for your time. Probably we'll have the next community learning session the next month. But if you want to host something like this, just let me know. Thanks a lot.